Hi, this is Casey Gwinn from the National Family Justice Center Alliance, and on behalf of Gail Strack and our whole team here, we want to just thank you for spending the time and the energy to really dive into this whole area of non-fatal strangulation cases. In 1995 in San Diego, we became particularly interested in these so-called choking cases. We were seeing hundreds of cases where victims of domestic violence would say, "He choked me," but there was no visible injury. We didn't know how significant or serious it was, and it took the death of two teenagers in 1995, young women named Tamara and Cassandra, who lost their lives in a domestic violence assaults where they had been previously strangled and then they were killed, and we didn't get it. The cases weren't prosecuted before they were killed, and the result was homicide. And after Tamara and Cassandra died, Gail Strack said, we got to take a close look at this. And we went through 300 cases, now a published study that's been published nationally in the Journal of Emergency Medicine. But we went through 300 cases we had in our office and went through the police reports where it said choking, choking, choking. And we found all kinds of signs and symptoms that medical professionals were seeing, police officers were seeing, but nobody knew what it meant. When she said she had a sore throat, we didn't know what that meant. We saw a little bit of redness. We didn't know what it meant. And out of that 300 case review in 1995 and 1996 came an awareness that we had to focus on these cases. Now, many years later, here we are. We now run what's called the National Strangulation Training Institute for the U.S. Department of Justice. It's the first program of its kind in the United States focused exclusively on training professionals to deal with non-fatal strangulation cases, particularly in domestic violence, though it applies in sexual assault as well. And the National Strangulation Training Institute has a website that's available to you. We have an online course that can be taken by law enforcement officers to receive advanced training. We have a host of resources on that website at strangulationtraininginstitute.com. And that website is a good resource for you to find out more about what I'm just going to touch on briefly here. The research is now being done in all kinds of places all over the world, and the research is very clear. Men who strangle women, men who put a hand or hands or a ligature around their partner's neck, are the most dangerous men on the planet in domestic violence situations. They might as well be raising their hand and saying, "I'm a killer." They're either threatening to kill her, they're going to kill her, or they're going to kill someone else. We just finished a study in the Treasure Valley outside of Boise, Idaho, and found that 80% of all critical incidents involving officer-involved shootings involve men with a history of domestic violence, many of whom had a history of strangulation with their partner before they ended up being shot by a police officer or shooting a police officer. These men are killers. They'll kill women, they'll kill children, they'll kill bystanders, they'll kill police officers. So that man that's putting his hand around a woman's neck and she says, "He choked me," and you look and there's no visible injury, he's a killer. In fact, a recent research in the Journal of Emergency Medicine in 2008 just found that a man who puts his hands around a woman's neck once is dramatically increasing the likelihood that he's either going to try to kill her or will kill her. If a man strangles a woman in an intimate relationship once, the likelihood of him later attempting to kill her goes up 700%. And the likelihood of him actually killing her goes up 800%. So when we see these cases of strangulation or choking, they should go to the top of the list. They should be the most significant cases that we prosecute. And I'll go even further to say that if tomorrow every prosecutor in America stopped prosecuting slaps and pushes and shoves and other forms of domestic violence and just prosecuted non-fatal strangulation cases, we would dramatically reduce domestic violence homicides in this country. Because those are the men that are more likely to be sociopaths, psychopaths, and more likely to kill their partners. So as we're pushing this training out all over the country through individual trainings, on videos, on our website, through national trainings, we're just challenging everybody think twice about these cases. For so many years we missed it. We didn't realize how serious they were. We didn't realize that many of these victims are suffering permanent brain damage and they don't even know it. A anoxic brain injury. I was in Longview, Washington just a few months ago, and I was doing a training for a large group of professionals, doctors, nurses, law enforcement professionals, and I was talking about the long-term effects of strangulation, the brain damage, the lack of memory being evidence of brain damage, all of these things that we're learning about strangulation cases. And after about 2.5 hours, we took a break, and a woman came up to me, and she was crying, and she said, "You need to know my story." And she said, when I was 21 years old, I was in an abusive relationship for 2 years. And I was strangled 9 times by my boyfriend, and I lost consciousness 9 times. But every time I bounced back, I was okay. And she said, I'm now facing the end of my life. She said, in the last 2 years, I've had 4 cryptogenic strokes. Cryptogenic strokes are strokes where the doctors really have a hard time saying what the cause is. But she said, I just met with my neurologist, and my neurologist said exactly what you're saying here. He believes that brain damage that I suffered in my 20s when I was being choked by my partner is going to end up killing me. And she said, in fact, my neurosurgeon said that if I have one more cryptogenic stroke, it's going to kill me. And she was sobbing. And she looked right at me and she said, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't somebody tell me? And I just put my arms around her and hugged her. And I said, we didn't know. 30 years ago, we didn't know. But we know now. We're responsible now for the research that's coming out, for the information we've learned, for what you can learn from this training, from the National Strangulation Training Institute. We're responsible now to tell victims what it is that's going on when they're being strangled by their partners, to train law enforcement officers in how to document these cases. These cases should all be felonies. Presumptively, they should be prosecuted as felonies. Even no visible injury cases right now, we're seeing aggressive prosecutors around the country begin to file those as felony non-fatal strangulation cases. Because what's going on inside is much more significant than what you can see outside. And that one red spot of petechiae that may be external tells you there's petechiae internally, as Dr. Dean Hawley tells us. And that means they've suffered anoxic brain injury, which means they've suffered permanent brain damage, the loss of brain cells permanently. We owe it to victims. We owe it to those who have died in strangulation assaults, those who have died in gunshot incidents where they were previously strangled. We owe it to police officers who have lost their lives at the hands of men with a history of violence against women. We owe it to the children that are growing up in these homes to treat men, and it is almost entirely men, who strangle women. We owe it to all of them to treat those men as serious and dangerous offenders, offenders that deserve all of our attention and all of our focus, and the victims deserve all of our advocacy efforts and all of our medical attention to try to protect them and serve them and save them. That's our responsibility. That's our call. Thank you for being part of this training. Please reach out to us at the National Strangulation Training Institute and the National Family Justice Center Alliance for more resources. We're currently publishing a book that will be available later this year on non-fatal strangulation assaults in partnership with the California DA's Association. We want to help you. We want to make sure that for police officers, for prosecutors, for medical professionals, you're the best at this. You don't miss a case. You know how to handle them, you know how to document them, you know how to do advocacy with the victims, you know everything that we would call best practices today to ensure that we're saving victims and we're holding perpetrators of this crime accountable. God bless you.